Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. In the West Coast, it's lunch. On the East Coast, it's mid-afternoon. Over in Europe, it's early evening. And over in Asia, including Australia, it's very, very early. So thank you for getting up. We typically enjoy a worldwide audience. And last time we had a gentleman in Dublin in the pub having a beer while participating in the webinar. A little bit of housekeeping. So before we jump into things, we are in the final planning stages for the next 9 cities for the workshop tour coming up. There's actually go to the newsletter up on smbnation.com and go to one of the older newsletters, and most recent newsletter, excuse me, and there's an opportunity for you to fill out a survey on the cities you'd like to see and some of the topics you'd like to see covered. So we're hearing, of course, a lot about Office 365, Azure. Moneymakers is scoring higher than we thought it would, and not surprisingly, Windows 10 is not doing as well. I think we're starting to conclude we've been there, done that. So if you could do that for me, appreciate it, but we're looking at July 29th in Fort Lauderdale is the first kickoff city for the second half of the year. Next week, we have the migration series continuing, and it relates to PSTs. So same time, same location, 12 noon Thursday for the webinar. And then this week, I called, affectionately on the Sunday paper, I called it Ransomware Week because we have StorageCraft presenting on this topic, very popular. And then there was a contributed article from another vendor in the current newsletter, the Sunday paper. So let's get going. With that said, Martin from StorageCraft is with us today. Martin, hello. Where are you? And sir, what is your story?
Hey, so yeah, this is Martin. I'm in Draper, Utah right now, where it's hot and sunny, and it looks like it's going to be that way for the next week or so. So I'm a sales engineer. I'm a sales engineer. I've been with StorageCraft now for 4 years. I actually just got to that point, so I've got to really understand the StorageCraft story, and I understand where we fit in when it comes to the MSP business and actual disaster recovery and offering that as a service. So that's kind of my specialty, and I'm real excited actually to present this topic of ransomware and see if we can't help you out.
Excellent. Well, let's jump right into it, sir.
All right. Well, very good. So let's go ahead and just get started. Today's topic then is how to prevent ransomware and discourage data kidnappers. The way we're going to start our discussion is to first of all see if we can't frame exactly what it is that a disaster is. All right. You know, a lot of times when people think of disasters, or they think about these terrible things that are going to destroy your data, you know, you take a look at this slide, you know, you got this big sign with a tornado, you think natural disaster, something that's going to be absolutely catastrophic. The reality is, though, that those particular disasters really only make up maybe 2 to 3% of the disasters that you think of, or the actual disasters that can actually destroy data. So oftentimes when you're thinking about backup and disaster recovery and keeping your data safe, you got to rethink that a little bit and understand that there are a lot of different ways that you can have an actual disaster. You'll even see right there, it says if you disrupt your normal business operations, it's a disaster. All right? Any system goes down, it's a disaster. You lose data, it's a disaster. So how are we going to prevent against that? Now, specific to this, we're going to be talking about ransomware. All right? And everybody has, I'm sure that everybody on the call has got to the point now where they've at least heard of ransomware. They understand that it's this malicious malware that can be sent out, infect your files, and actually prevent you having access to your data. More specifically, what is ransomware? It is a type of malware that restricts access to files. And the way it does that is it actually encrypts that data so that it is no longer usable. And the worst thing about it is if you are infected with ransomware and those files have become encrypted, you have to pay in order to get access to that data once again. All right, so the people that actually distribute on these terrible thieves that are out there destroying or preventing access to your data, they're just like kidnappers. All right, so they're taking your data hostage, and until you pay, you're not going to get that data back. They even give you a time frame. You know, if you don't pay within a particular amount of time, The key that they have available for you to use to restore or to recover that data is going to be destroyed, or they might, the virus itself might just destroy your data on its own. So it's a terrible, terrible, malicious way of attacking organizations for money. Now, when you are infected with ransomware, you know it. If you find yourself in a scenario where all of a sudden your files no longer have the same file names, that's one of the things that might key you off. But then again, you might also get little messages like this: your system has been encrypted. And it'll go on to say, if you want to get that data back, you have such and such a time in order to reach out to us and pay the ransom, and then you can go ahead and get that data back after they send you a key to unlock it. It's really bad news, and it's certainly something that you don't want to run into. In fact, I can imagine it's any IT person's worst nightmare to actually turn on one of their critical servers and see a message like this. You don't want to be infected with ransomware. Now, a quick history of ransomware. You may have all heard of, if not, maybe this might be new to you, but the first real big infection of ransomware was something that was known as CryptoLocker. So when a lot of people talk about ransomware, sometimes they'll just say, yeah, were you infected with CryptoLocker? And it turns out CryptoLocker was kind of the first of its kind that really caused a big impact, when it comes to ransomware. And just take a look at that statistics there. The CryptoLocker creators, they earned $27 million in ransom payments in the first 2 months. All right? These hackers, these people that are putting together these ransomware attacks, they're kind of a migration from those that help to distribute the previous forms of malware that would do the ads and would go in and you have all these pop-ups in an attempt to gain access to your machine. What they used to do is they would try to exploit the security of your machines and grab personal data they can then use for identity theft and those types of things, so they can then gain money that way. Well, you know what? They don't have to do that anymore. If you get ransomware, CryptoLocker, something like this, all they got to do now is say, yeah, we're going to keep your data hostage, and then you can pay us to get it back. And that's now how they make the money. They kind of cut out that whole identity theft thing, and they're just straight up saying, give me your money, I'll give you your data. Kind of a bad situation to be in. It's kind of like being mugged online. Nobody wants that. So how does this impact your business? Any organization that's successful has got a lot of critical data that they need access to. Unfortunately, ransomware attacks are designed specifically to encrypt and prevent that data from being accessed. If you find yourself, if you're a financial institution and you lose records of your clients, you no longer have access to that data, that can be a real impact on your business. Take a look at these different notes here. You lose sensitive information, the disruption to your business operations because you don't have the data that you need to do your work, that could be a huge disruption. Financial losses just to restore those files, the time it's going to take, even if you get your key, the time it takes to go back in and restore those encrypted files, that's loss of time. Time is money in that kind of a situation. But that last one might just be the most important one, potential damage to your reputation. Just think of that. If word got out that your organization was struck by ransomware, that somebody somewhere along the line found a vulnerability in your security, and that word gets out, just think of the damage that could do to your reputation. And if you have a bad reputation, who's going to do business with you?
Good Lord, Mark. That's how gossip and rumors get started.
Exactly. That's how it is. How many people, over the last year or so remember that big vulnerability that Target had? A bunch of client data was stolen, credit card information. After understanding and knowing that, are you really comfortable going back to Target? Now, luckily, I think they've been able to recover pretty good, but at the same time, it's going to have an impact on your client base. Do you want to continue to do business with somebody that doesn't take care of their data, that doesn't take care of their organization? Those are the types of things you want to look at. So ransomware, it's out there, and it's kind of a big deal. Unfortunately, it's also really easy to get infected. All right, right there, one wrong click, and you've got ransomware. All right, ransomware is hidden in a number of different little applications or little applets and stuff like that you may not even know about. Most common, it might be in the form of a little attachment that might be sent to you in email. You click on that attachment from somebody that you don't know who it is just because you're going, I wonder what that is. You click it, next thing you know, you got ransomware. And then what does ransomware do? Well, once you've launched that little application and it sends that ransomware through your system, it goes out and it starts infecting your critical files. And it's gonna infect it can infect anything: Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, music files, video files. If you're a hospital, heck, it could infect the different image files, of a radiology group. I mean, it's really insidious. And what it does is, once it finishes infecting everything that's on the local drive, then guess what it does? It starts looking for other drives to try to infect. Anything else that it has access to, it's going to try to infect. It starts with your C drive, then it spreads to the D drive, then it spreads out to a USB drive that might be connected. Oh, and get this, you have a map drive on your network to a network share that contains vital information? Yeah, it can go ahead and kind of work its way into that data share as well. And now it becomes not just a problem with a single machine, but it can now become a much more detrimental infection than that. And also, it can happen to anybody. If you think you're safe, unfortunately, you're probably really not. Take a look at some of these organizations that have been infected. University of Calgary, this is something that happened about a month or so ago. The University of Calgary was hit, and they didn't have any way to get their data back except for to pay the ransom. They had to pay nearly $16,000. All right. Before that, a little bit earlier on in the year. Yes.
Yeah, I actually in another endeavor, another area, I have a relationship with the IT group at the University of Calgary, and I dropped them a note when that happened, and I dropped a sincere and kind note, kind of expressing my sympathies and condolences, because I'm an IT pro and we're all in this together. And I didn't hear back, which doesn't surprise me. I know they're both probably busy with that, if not a little embarrassed, and maybe they're not allowed to talk about it. I don't know, but I just kind of wanted to make mention. Everyone on this call is an IT pro, and we're all one, and it's not fun. It's not fun when that happens to you. But please continue.
No, it's not. I actually have my own personal experience that I'll share here shortly in that regard as well. But take a look at that, and those sums are not small. It's not like ransomware is saying, okay, pay me $150 and they'll unlock anything. If you're a large organization, they're going to try and get you as much as they possibly can. Hollywood Presbyterian Hospital, $17,000. And to keep it safe, you actually had to buy it in Bitcoin. That's pretty inconvenient. But then look at that. There's even some smaller amounts that have been paid that are noteworthy simply because of who they infected. A police department, okay, back in Massachusetts, they had to pay $500. An entire city of New Jersey had to pay some money. So it can happen to just about anybody. If you take a look at that final statistics there, ransomware losses are estimated to be as high as $209 billion, and that's as of March of this year, since January. So in 3 months, FBI is saying, yeah, organizations may have lost as much as $209 million. That's incredible. And now to myself, it can happen to anybody. Yeah, even a tech guy like me, at home I have myself a nice little media server, and everything is going out just fine until one day I'm trying to get some movies streamed. They're not showing up. I'm like, well, what the heck is going on? And I take a look at the server, and all of a sudden I'm seeing all these unrecognizable file names. I'm looking at it and thinking, oh, come on, this can't be real. And sure enough, there's a little note, a little text document down the bottom of one of my folders, and it says, yeah, if you want to have access to these files again, you're going to have to pay up. I need to contact a specific email address within a particular time frame. And I thought to myself, you've got to be kidding me. It's almost like being burglarized, and it's not at all fun. And I got to be completely honest with you. I had to actually lose some of those files because I had not adequately prepared myself. And if you talk about that just being a real kick to the face, I as a tech guy, I thought to myself, that is just one of the dumbest things I think I've ever done. And and at this point, I almost have, simply because of that, I kind of have a little agenda now to see if we can't fight back. And fortunately for me, I work with a company that's really going to help out with that kind of a thing. But don't let it happen to you. That's a terrible feeling. So there's ransomware. It's out there. Everybody's vulnerable, but are there ways to protect against it? And the answer is yes. You can protect yourself against it, but even that isn't necessarily a guarantee. However, the best way to protect yourself would be to go ahead and first of all, make sure that you're your users. All right, make sure that they're aware of the different ways that malware and ransomware can be spread. Help them guard against accidental clicking of email attachments. Help them understand, what types of websites are going to, are more at risk of infecting your machine than others. Download. Down there at the bottom of that list, don't download software from torrent sites. Not a very good idea. A lot of this stuff is kind of shady. If it looks shady, you probably shouldn't be involved with it because you may have some kind of attachment that's going to end up infecting your system. In addition to that, make sure that your machines are protected with antivirus and anti-malware software. There's stuff out there. You can find stuff from Microsoft for free. Windows Defender is a great thing to use. I've got it running on all my machines at home on a personal level. Of course, when you're talking about organizations, there's a bunch of different antivirus software that you can look at as well. Make sure it's enabled. Make sure it's there, and it can catch some of these types of infections. Along that same line, you want to make sure that you eliminate those threats before they even reach the end user. Use good security practices on your network. Enable your firewalls. Make sure that your operating systems are updated effectively. Use email spam filtering, and just limit access to that important data to only those that really need to use it. So, there are ways. Just standard security practices oftentimes can prevent you from having those types of infections with ransomware. All right, but it's not fail-safe. All right, you can do a number of things, and you can get yourself to a point where you're pretty secure, but there's really no guarantee because all it takes is for somebody to not practice, the security practices that they've been taught, and the next thing you know, you're infected. So what do you do if prevention fails? Okay, well, according to our little slide here, and I happen to agree with it, you really kind of only have three options. You can either wipe your hands of it and say, that's it, just have to lose the data, start from scratch. That's definitely an option. In my current situation, I actually had to do that because some of my stuff wasn't backed up. Now, it turns out I did have a lot of that media that was replaceable, and I could go ahead and do it, but I lost data. Some of it I had to just wipe my hands of and say, doggone it, I lost that movie. I lost those files. I lost those pictures. And sometimes that's what you got to do. Another option, of course, is to actually pay the ransom. If you've got the deep pockets and you want to do it, if your data is important enough to you, that's another thing that you should do. Although, honestly, there's really no reason to if you've planned ahead. Take a look at that final option there. You could also simply recover from backup. Another practice that I have not mentioned yet, which discussing moving forward, is backup. You can prevent and recover from any kind of ransomware attack if you have got a carefully put together backup plan using the right backup software. And that's where the remainder of my focus is going to be in this presentation. All right, a case for option number 3. There's an organization that StorageCraft partners with, and it's called CPI Solutions. Now, they operate out of Southern California. Okay, and they're an MSP with us, and they currently manage over 4,000 servers and desktops. They're responsible for the proper functioning of a whole bunch of IT devices, desktops and servers across many different organizations. Now, they are no stranger to malware. Out of all of those clients that they work with, 10 of them actually have been attacked by ransomware, and they have been infected, affecting approximately 830 users and destroying up to 3 million files. They have seen ransomware at its worst, but take a look at that last statistic: 0 ransom paid. And you want to know why that is? Because they had a solid backup solution in place. The Vice President of the Managed IT Services of CPI Solutions, James Oberhaus, has even given us a little quote that he's said we can freely share, saying that no business is ever really safe from malicious software, including ransomware. The best form of protection is frequent and consistent backups that are checked on a regular basis. All right? Backup, a very, very important part of keeping that data safe. Now, everybody's heard of backup. Everybody knows, yeah, you should always back up your stuff, but it's until you're infected with ransomware that sometimes that message needs to be sent home. So let's go ahead and talk about that a little bit. We're going to now focus on how you fight ransomware. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to create regular backups. Now, I say regular because it's not really enough to say, yeah, I'm going to take a full backup today, and maybe I'll take the next backup, a month from now, and it'll be a full backup. But, you don't know what's going to happen during that next month. And if your most recent backup is a month old, how much, how are you going to accommodate for all that data that had been lost within that last month? All right. So you want to create regular backups. Okay. The benefit there is to be able to restore files and even a whole system to a state prior to the infection. All right. Now, as far as the different bullet points go, yeah, you want something that's going to capture everything: your operating system, application, setting, services, etc. You want it reliable. You want it fast and secure. We have a lot of different environments to operate in, both physical and virtual machines. You want to back up both the virtual and the physical data. You want full backups as well as incremental backups. Your incremental backups are what's going to happen that will happen on a regular basis, which will allow you to find specific points in time that you can restore to. That bottom option, schedule as often as every 15 minutes. It's a good idea to take your backups frequently. The more frequent you take those backups, the better. So, a backup solution that's going to be able to back up as frequently as every 15 minutes is actually very important. Now, let me show you how important these regular backups are. We're going to do this by kind of jumping in just a second to what it is that StorageCraft has to offer. All right, we offer an application called SPX. It stands for Shadow Protect Cross-Platform. It's an image-based backup solution that runs both in Windows and Linux environments. And we can. Yes, sir.
Yeah, let me ask a question. Maybe I'm jumping the gun, so forgive me. But are you saying that you support Linux systems? Because I thought Shadow Protect only worked on Windows.
You know what? That's a great question. And SPX actually does. Previous versions of Shadow Protect were Windows only, but we released SPX about a year ago. And in doing so, we expanded our support into Linux. And so environments such as Ubuntu, CentOS, Red Hat, we can now back up and create images, all right, of those solutions, continuous incremental backups, just like we can in Windows. So the answer is yes, we will now support both Windows and Linux environments. So great question. I'm glad you caught that. Other questions? You have another question for me?
No, not yet, but you know what? That actually kind of what begs the question, folks. We're approaching midpoint of the webinar, the bottom of the hour. If you join us, please use the questions capability to ask your questions. Hey, Ginny, I'll need today for you to put that over in the chat. I'm for some reason not showing the questions drop down on my control panel, but folks, use the questions capability to indeed ask your questions. We'll get those answered. And then next week we have same time webinar on PST migrations. Let's jump back into today now. Go ahead, Martin.
All right. Very good. So what I'm going to do here is going to show you just how effective a good backup can be in a scenario where we've actually lost some data. So what I'm doing here, I'm creating a new folder. We're going to call it SMB Nation. And we're going to create a new text document here as well. And I'm going to call it test, and we'll open it up. We're actually going to put some text in here. All right. So we're going to go ahead and save this information. So great. We got some important information that we've just created on this machine, and everything's ready. Now, SPX is currently installed. It's actually scheduled to take backups every hour. Now, I've said that with that real critical data, you may want to be backing up as often as every 15 minutes. That might actually be a better way to go. But even in my case, that my next backup isn't for another half an hour from now. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to kick off a backup right now because I just created some important information. So I'll hit play. We'll start a quick incremental backup. And this data that I just created on our SMB Nation, we're going to save it. All right, so we're going to take a quick system state backup of my machine. It's going to capture everything the way this machine currently looks like in the form of an incremental backup. Now, the process takes just a couple seconds. There we go. Backup is now complete. And this information has now been saved in my backup, okay? But, oh, no, somebody was messed with my computer, and the next thing you know, my machine has been infected with ransomware. And, ransomware has now got hold of my data and has now got it encrypted. And this is really bad news. No longer am I able to open these files with the information that I need, but the data has now become encrypted. Now, if you take a look at that, this is no longer the same data that I was dealing with before. And it's because of that rotten ransomware, all right? Now, of course, I've just been given a notification. I'm going to have to send a couple $100 just to get this data unlocked. And you know what? I can't do that. And I'm not going to do that because I've already protected myself with an up-to-date backup of my system. So what do I got to do? You know what? I'm just going to go grab that file from my backup, and it's quick and easy. SPX allows that to be something very, very simple. We have a timeline that you can find your incremental backups on. This is the timeline right here. I'm going to select the file that I'm interested in. This is the backup that I just completed. You know, I'm just going to say, you know, I don't need to pay that ransom. So I'm going to click on that point in time, and we have an option right here to open up that backup image, which will allow me to find the original version of that file and restore it. And watch how quick and easy this is. All right, my backup itself is actually encrypted, so not anybody can just open up those backup files. So I'm going to enter my, whoops, I think I just misspelled that. Yeah, let's try that again. So I'm going to enter the password for my backup so I can gain access to it. And it's going to say, all right, let's open up the backup image. It allows me to choose how I want to view and recover that data. In my case, I'll say, yeah, I want you to create a new drive for me representing this particular point in time. So I'll click OK. SPX is now going to get back to work. It's going to create a new E drive for me. Oh, that's not good. Let's try that again. All right, let's try that once more. It looks like my virtual machine failed. Let's go ahead and do this from where my backup images are actually stored, which is another great option. This is something I'm going to be getting into anyway as well. My backups have actually been sent to a backup server, and guess what? I have access to that server from a different machine. So let's try that process one more time. I'm going to go ahead and hit on this mount option, the mount option from my image chain. That's what it is. And I'm going to find the most recent file.
Hey, you're keeping it real. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. So we're going to find.
We got a front row seat, folks, to the real world. It's always always refreshing.
This is the real world, right? All right. So we're going to open up the location where those backup images are at. All right. We're currently finding the backup images. So even if your machine were to fail, you can still gain access to those backup files from any other location that has access to them. And while this is actually opening up those images, I'm going to restart that virtual machine just in case I need to. All right, and whatever ends up working quicker is the one I'm going to end up going with.
Yeah, a couple questions while you're doing that.
Sure.
Have you heard of any ransomware that was able to encrypt data on unlabeled USB drives?
On what kind of USB drives? I'm sorry?
Yeah, it just says unlabeled USB drives. The gentleman goes on to say, for instance, the backup drives attached to an SBS server. So USB drive.
Yeah, honestly, I actually have, especially some of the newer ransomwares that are out there have the capability to be able to extend their reach, not just to local machines, but actually out to the network. And so if that network is not locked down, certainly that data can kind of, the ransomware spread its little web and find its way to USB drives attached to a network share somewhere. So there are certain strategies that you need to take to keep that data separate and aside from that different ransomware. So that's actually a great question. But now, as you can see, I've got my backup chain. I'm going to find the most recent backup in my backup chain, which is this one right here. And I'm going to perform that mount option from my actual recovery device. There we go. Click OK. Again, we'll mount it as my E drive. I'll click OK. It's going to start that booting, that process. And there we go. Just created a new drive for me, all right, representing the point in time of that machine that I just took that backup of. Now, here's the good news. Let's go ahead and grab the original version of that file that accidentally got encrypted. It's been found in my desktop. I was logged in as the user or the administrator. So if I go to my users, open up my administrator account, take a look at the desktop. There it is. There's the original version of that folder. I can open this up. There's the original version of my file. It's all right there. To restore everything, all I got to do is drag and drop it out, and I have now recovered that data. I can now go back in, log into my my old machine. I've got a really complicated password there. Normally I can just pass I don't know why I did that. Let's try that one more time.
Hey, while you're doing that, Martin, I'll read a question and answer it. What internet security providers are the best protection for preventing ransomware attacks? Folks, what I would do, I'm comfortable answering that question this way, is that look at our past webinars. Last week we enjoyed a presentation from the group at Trend Micro. So feel free to avail yourself of some past webinars that we've had and make your own best decision. Martin, please continue.
Very good. So as you can see, everything is still, I can now come in here and say, I don't need this encrypted data anymore because I've got the real stuff. Go ahead and get rid of it and restore, copy over the correct stuff back to the actual production environment. So, with the good backup in place, with incrementals that are happening on a regular basis, you're going to be rest assured to be able to find a point in time that you can restore to and get that data back, all right? And it comes down to making sure that you have got the right solution in place, okay? And with SPX, you're going to have that capability. You're going to be able to get it done, all right? Now, there's one more thing I wanted to show you. That machine that we were working with before, it actually died. Let's say you get to the point where so much of that data on your original production machine has become corrupted that honestly it becomes no longer usable, and you have to restore from an actual, you got to do a complete bare metal restore to that machine, because that might be the only recourse you have left. Otherwise, you could spend days and days and days trying to rebuild it. Well, what you can do to get that thing operational again quickly is do something what StorageCraft has to offer, which is called a virtual boot. Now, again, I'm going to go ahead and do this from my actual recovery device, but if I find myself in a scenario where a machine is actually inoperable because of the damage that's been done, a virtual boot is something that can solve the problem. And I can launch that, again, from within the SPX console by clicking on the virtual boot option. All right, we support both Hyper-V and VirtualBox as our different hypervisors. We'll go ahead and run with Hyper-V because this is a Windows 2012 server. Again, we're going to navigate out, find a recent point in time to boot from within my backup chain. All right, once I select that, again, it's going to require the password so that I can gain access. And we'll give it a name so that we can keep track of it. Add a little bit of RAM to make it work. And then click on Create. And what's going to happen now is directly from my backup images, I can literally create a virtual machine and operate within that virtual machine environment until such time as I am ready to do a restore to either a brand new machine, a reconfigured, repartitioned machine, whatever it is, but I'm now bridging the gap so that I don't have to dedicate all of my time on fixing that problem right away. I can now ease myself into it, but still have those mission critical services running right away after a ransomware attack that has kept that data from being utilized. All right, so a good backup solution in place. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple more questions. Is the backup saved? I'll start over. Is the backup saved on an SMB share?
Oh, okay. You were a little bit muffled as you were beginning that. Can you repeat that one more time? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Is the backup saved on an SMB share?
Okay. Is the answer is yes. Yeah, you can. We're actually very flexible. You can back it up onto an SMB share. You can back it up to a USB drive. You could back it up to a NAS device, using an SMB share. You could back up to a Linux device using Samba, which again also uses the SMB. I guess the key to look at is if it can be found on your local Windows domain as storage, you can back up to it. Now, there are certain risks associated with that, and we'll address those here in just a minute, because I've already talked about how ransomware can spread its little web across your network if you don't have the right protections in place. And we'll go ahead and address those here in just a second. But I want to show the virtual boot actually begin to launch. As you can see, my virtual boot has started, and Hyper-V should show me that virtual machine here any second now, and you can actually watch that this thing is going to start booting up. We'll give it just another second. If it doesn't, in the interest of time, we might go ahead and move on. But to give you an idea, we can actually get those virtual machines up and running very, very quickly directly from the backup image. Looks like it's taken a little bit longer than I would have expected. So I'm going to go ahead and bring us back into the presentation. All right. And let's talk about what else we can do in relation to those backups. All right. As we scroll down, you can write, and probably should be writing, to a network share, but take a look at that final piece. You want to restrict access. All right, even though ransomware has the capability to reach across and infect a mapped drive, or reach across and infect the share, there are certain ways we can lock that down. You want to use unique credentials in order to lock down a specific share, so that not just anybody or any user is going to be able to have access to it. Make sure that the access is limited to administrative rights, especially to shares that contain mission critical data. Okay, those backup images, that's mission critical data. You want to make sure that that those files are protected as well. So only allow access to individuals that have administrative rights to access it, and that will prevent the ransomware from automatically just being able to reach out and infect it. That goes for SMB shares on a storage server, shares on a NAS device. Another thing that's beneficial, and you can do this with the SPX software, is to actually run periodic antivirus scans. First of all, on those shared folders, you want to make sure that you don't map an actual backup folder. Once you've mapped a drive, those security details are saved, like the username and password and everything are saved in that mapped drive, and they're instantly accessible from whatever user is currently logged in. So don't map the actual share as a drive. Make sure the share itself is not immediately accessible within the Windows Explorer. Another thing that you want to do is replicate your data to some other location. Not only do you want to keep that data safe on site, but you want to take the data and put it off-site as well, separate from the physical network, so that even if those backup files are vulnerable, you know, if for some reason they are not locked down successfully, so long as that data has been sent off-site so that it's completely separate from the data that's actually found locally, you're going to be able to keep that data safe as well. You know, everybody talks about cloud services. Cloud is now something that has become a real big buzzword, and there's a reason for it. It's a way to keep your data safe and sound. All right, StorageCraft has its own cloud service, and we offer a number of different service levels within that cloud, which can really help when it comes to disaster recovery. And if you're interested in something like that, certainly reach out to a StorageCraft professional. We'll be able to sit down and chat with you about those different service levels. But replicate your data, put it someplace else off-site. And then you also want to check your backups. Make sure the backups themselves are clean. You know, the SPX backups that are created are images files that you can actually open up and run an antivirus on. It'll actually double check the file system held within the backups themselves and make sure that the data within those backups is actually in good shape. The virtual boot that I've just been showing, you know, you can do a virtual boot of your backup images, and from within that virtual environment, you can also run an antivirus, let it go through and scan, and make sure that you know, it gets rid of any of the viruses that might be within the backups themselves. So that's another thing that you can do. Check your backup viruses. And then we're going back to education. Make sure that you're educating your users. Keep the backup software itself restricted. All right. Make sure that not just anybody has access to the Shadow Protect or the SPX console, because we don't want people going in and changing the backup settings, especially once it's been set, because we want to make sure those backups continue to be successful and are done appropriately. And again, don't click on email attachments, especially from those senders that you have no idea who they are. Right? Now, if you're able to lock down everything correctly, if you've got a good backup solution in place, you can always rest assured that you're going to be able to recover without actually having to pay a ransom. So I guess the things that you probably want to walk away from, and I'm ready here to go ahead and close my little presentation, but you want to make sure that you've got your data safe. Go ahead, put those preventive measures in first as well. You know, make sure that you educate your end users, put up your firewalls, guard the best you can against infection. But even more important is make sure that you have the ability to take corrective action if you are, and that is with a good, solid backup. All right, and we've got all the tools that are necessary to provide a great, you know, a great recovery solution. All right, mounting the backups, the virtual boot. You can even see here we've got a couple more options. Hardware independent restore. If you need to restore to a different device than the machine that was originally operating on, we have the capability to do that. Head Start Restore technology, being able to actually pre-stage a virtual machine to launch outside of the virtual boot process. But if you've got a good backup in place, you're going to be able to restore, just like it says here, every time and everywhere. And StorageCraft is the key to be able to do that. So hopefully this information has been helpful for you. Okay, a couple things that I want to leave you with is that we're certainly happy to talk to any of you out there. who see a benefit of utilizing a good disaster recovery solution within your business. We're glad to talk to you about our own partner programs, express to you ways in which you can make money using the StorageCraft suite of tools, which include the SPX, our ability to manage the backup images with Image Manager, our cloud technology. We can make it available to you for all of your clients to keep them all in good shape. And there's the different benefits that you can get here, and expanding your offers beyond just virus protection, but also promote disaster recovery, reduces management costs. Heck, we can even create a recurring revenue stream for you, and we've got the specialists here that can talk to you about how to really make that a profitable part of your business. So if you are interested in the partner program, the information's there. Yes, sir.
Yeah, not so fast, Martin. We're not going to let you get away that quickly to enjoy that sunshine, okay? So just keep the seatbelt on her. I have a question. I think I can impute what the individual is at. Well, first of all, before I get to a question, we have an accolade from, I think it's that guy in Dublin again. He, Irish partner, Irish MSP, wrote me a paragraph discussing how your solution helped with his client. He ended up paying ransomware. So I won't read the whole paragraph, but accolades from Ireland. The next entry says tape drive ? So the context is how to interact with tape drives and ransomware and tape drives and blah, blah, blah.
So how are we talking about? How does SPX interact with tape drives?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, sir. If you wouldn't mind clarifying that, then I have. Go ahead.
I was just going to say I could probably address that. So it's always a good idea to whatever backup solution you're using. If you already have a tape infrastructure, of course that's going to be better than nothing at all. One thing to keep in mind about SPX is that we don't back up directly to tape. Okay, we actually will back up to because we are image-based. It's best to have that data readily available so that you can promptly restore. So we back up to typical storage. So that includes SSD drives. That includes network shares, NAS, backup volume, storage volume, stuff like that. So we don't back up directly to tape. However, there are a lot of organizations that like the ability to be able to archive backup data and actually have a tape solution already in place. And they can utilize and leverage their tape solution by taking the backup images that StorageCraft creates and archiving them to tape. That's actually a very popular method of archiving the actual Shadow Protect images. But as far as a direct answer, does SPX support backup to tape? We actually don't. We will back up to your typical hard drive storage.
Okay. Next question. What hypervisors do you support? Yeah.
All right. That's a great question. So I illustrated here. We didn't actually see the whole thing pop up, but I illustrated our virtual boot technology. Virtual boot is currently supported by Hyper-V and VirtualBox. Okay. In my scenario, my recovery server was actually a Windows 2012 server operating environment, and Hyper-V was automatically included, so I could actually utilize that as the method of bringing up the virtual machine. If on machines that don't, that aren't Windows 2012, let's say it's a Windows 2008 server, or even older than that, a Windows 2003 server, Hyper-V may not be readily available, and in those scenarios, you can actually utilize VirtualBox. In fact, VirtualBox was the first operating environment that we had for that virtual boot, and it's been a really great method to work from. So VirtualBox and Hyper-V are the virtual boot options that we have available for that virtual boot.
Okay, well, let's talk about profit through partnership. Why don't we jump into your slide and the good stuff?
Okay, all right, to kind of clear things up here. So if I go back, again, the StorageCraft partner programs that we offer are all designed about being able to expand your offerings from some of the other services that you might be offering, which are just a matter of getting machines up and running and providing IT services. But oftentimes disaster recovery can be left out. But it's a very, very important part of keeping your client's data safe and giving them the uptime that they need. So we're happy to offer and extend our ability to have you join our partner programs. As you can see right here, and we'll just cover the list one more time. We'll want to expand your offerings to promote disaster recovery and backup, be able to increase your ability to recover the critical business systems of your clients, reduce your management costs. This fourth one down here, of course, we want to find a way to help you to create a recurring revenue stream. And like I say, we have account managers who will be happy to work with you and help build that part of your business so that it becomes not just something that your clients are going to love you for, but it can actually become a very profitable piece of your business. All right. Down here at the bottom, it even says, if you can put together a good backup and disaster recovery solution for your clients, you really can create long-term trust and loyalty within your clients. And so to finish things off then, just keep in mind the partner programs that we offer are free to join. All right, it gives you access to NFR licenses of our software, so there's no charge for you to kind of get to know it and understand it so that you can sell it. We also provide MDF funds, so if you want to put together activities or some type of marketing events, we can actually help with that.
Well, I like free money. Hey Martin, I like free
Everybody.
money.
That's right. Everybody likes free money, and we can do that. So long as we understand what the event's going to be, we can definitely put together a little package of money to help out with that kind of thing. We offer both MSP and VAR programs, so you can either just directly resell the software, or if you are an MSP, we actually have a great program for MSPs that can give you a continuous revenue stream as well, and of course favorable margins. Who doesn't want that? So to finish things up, if you need more information, please go to our website. If you want to sign up, that same website is going to provide all the forms and everything for you to be able to sign up with as well. And with that, I'm hoping that the solution has been good. I'm still available to answer any additional questions. So if you got them, I don't mind spending the rest of the time just chatting about what it is that we have to offer.
Yeah, at this point, the deck's basically clear. Let me just look. Yeah, let's see. Can your software recover just files and folders?
Another great question. So SPX is an image-based backup solution. So to kind of clarify that, we're not necessarily identifying specific files or folders that we're backing up. We're going to capture everything. The cool thing about the SPX software is when it takes a backup, it's actually looking at the sector level. So essentially, it's looking at ones and zeros, right, on the different volumes, and we're going to capture all of that. So that includes your operating system, your system settings, your applications, application data. All of that is being pulled back and used to create that actual backup image. And then when we take incremental backups, we're only going to be capturing whatever data has changed at the sector level. So we're grabbing everything, and then as you can see, we do have the tools needed. So if you do need to restore at a file or a folder level, we're actually able to do that. But just keep in mind, we are not a file or folder only backup solution.
Perfect. Well, I think, sir, that the deck is clear. I guess people want to get back to the salt mine. We're a couple of weeks out from another major USA holiday, so I bet people are trying to front load their workload. and Martin, I know that we'll be seeing StorageCraft at the Microsoft Worldwide Partner Conference, known as WPC in Toronto, and for the purposes of this conversation, basically mid-July-ish, after the 4th of July. Will you be part of the traveling team that goes to WPC?
You know what? They have not invited me. They like to keep me in my little closet here, where I just have a little bright screen that I work in all the time. It's kind of a dark, dank corner of the office building. So I will not actually be out there, but I'm going to tell you what, anybody that's expecting to go to that conference, we've actually got some really cool stuff that we're about ready to unveil. So I do know that it's expected to be a great event. So when you get there, definitely look for the StorageCraft booth. We're going to have some great stuff to show you.
Oh, and hey, I just got a refresh. I guess my internet connection's a little wonky. Forgive me. There's two. We'll take a couple more questions here. Do you have any favorite appliances for backup?
Do we have any favorite appliances? Did I hear that right? Yeah. You know what? Okay, good question. So StorageCraft doesn't really get in the business of necessarily referring to specific vendors, but I'm going to give you a little. I'll give you my own little personal bias, I guess, when it comes to devices. I'm not going to say these are actual appliances, although I guess one of them actually is. We just this last year working with Buffalo, put out a NAS device. It's a TerraStation. For the life of me, I can't remember it now, but it's actually a little Buffalo NAS appliance that actually has SPX built into it, which allows you to take backups, and it becomes kind of its own repository. So take a look at Buffalo. And as far as other name brands that we work really well with when it comes to NAS storage, you know, you're going to want to look at companies like Drobo. Synology is another one, highly reliable. And of course, we've always had a great relationship with Western Digital, and Buffalo's are other big names. But I guess that's about the most I'll say. Other than that, we don't necessarily go out and promote.
No problem. Next question. Can you back up to AWS or Azure?
Oh, you know, another great question. Okay, so I've mentioned before that SPX backs up locally, you know, and that's the way you want to do it. You want to make sure that backup data is immediately available to you, and then you want to replicate off-site. So we don't have any physical tie-ins or even any software tie-ins to Azure or you know, or Amazon or Dropbox or some of these others. So I can't say that we back up directly to them. The one exception might be Azure, because when you enable, or when you get set up on Azure, it is possible to present that storage, you know, as an actual shared storage on a Windows network using SMB. So with that being the case, you might be able to back up directly to Azure, but we don't necessarily suggest that. We still think it's best to back up to some data storage locally and then replicate into those cloud storage locations.
Okay, minimum bandwidth. I've got a question asking sort of what's the minimum bandwidth to back up over the internet? What numbers do you throw around that a customer should have?
So minimum bandwidth, that's a good question, and it kind of fluctuates. You know, the minimum bandwidth would be any bandwidth that you have. We should be able to work with it, although, you know, if you got really low bandwidth, you know, you might be having some issues. I would suggest when it comes to a best practice, you're probably going to want to go at a minimum, especially if you're going to be replicating with FTP from some offsite location. You know, I would say at a minimum a 10 megabit connection. You know, we do offer a replication option called Shadow Stream that StorageCraft has created that could accommodate for slower bandwidth. It's still not going to be great, but it actually sends a block level transfer of data as opposed to file level, which is faster, and you can usually get a better transfer speed. But I would say best practice, try to look at a 10 megabit pipe as a minimum, and then of course go up from there. And then that would be my stand on that.
Okay, let's see. If my server is infected with ransomware and many of my files have been encrypted, is the best recovery strategy to restore a recent point in time disk image? So that's what the question says. So strategy.
You know what? That's actually a great question, and you know, again, a lot of it comes down to the actual situation and how much manpower is going to be required to, you know, to recover file by file. But I would say if you're attacked by ransomware and you find yourself in a scenario where you've got an entire data drive that has now been encrypted, I would actually think your best course of action might be to do a complete restore of that specific drive. You know, you could mount it temporarily to have access while that restore is being done. But the best course of action that in my opinion, is going to require the least amount of headache and additional overhead might be to simply restore that data drive.
Okay, last question. Starting to get on time, and this is the last one I have on the deck. Is StorageCraft licensed by device or data size?
Yeah, great question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hopefully this is the right answer for you, but it's actually per device. We actually license per device, whether it's a virtual environment or whether it's a physical environment. Virtual machines are licensed individually, not at the host level necessarily, and then physical machines definitely per specific device, per secret. Now, when it comes to virtual machines, we do offer socket licensing. So if you are hosting a whole bunch of virtual machines, we do have the ability to move from individual licensing of each guest to socket licensing, which can help support those costs. But So I guess we offer both those methods, but in most scenarios, especially in small businesses, you're very likely going to be just licensing each individual operating environment.
All right, Martin. Sure appreciate you dropping by this week and chatting with us, folks. You're going to get a thank you email. They come from me now. So give me about a day, and I'll get the thank you email out to you with the replay link and other information from Stagecraft. Sir, thank you. Again, Jenny, thank you as always over in the radio control room. So coming to you live from Seattle, Washington, Harry Burleson, with SMB Nation. Have a great day.